Hi, Granddad.
Hi,
How are you?
I'm fine for my age.
Fine for your age. So I just wanted to record you telling some of your crazy stories about growing up with a million siblings.
Well, first off, I'm the fourth of 14. My parents got married after the war was over, or actually just before the war was over, but they wanted to get married before that and have as large a family as they could. So,
So if not for the war, you probably would have had more siblings.
could have been, we don't know. The war slowed them down.
So what's nice about, well, it was hard for them to be apart, but it was nice is that you have all these letters that Grandpa sent to Grandma
Yeah, they
while he was
lost
alive.
all the ones my mother sent. So,
Well, I'm not surprised.
what?
I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
Grandma was more likely to
Yeah, but
save
she
it
had
than.
them all. I think they were all there. They just somewhere after my father mixed up and lost. I don't know.
Okay. But we do have grandpas.
Yeah,
So you were born, what year were you born?
50.
50, and
Very round year.
it makes it easy to
Yeah,
figure out how old you are.
certainly did. Made me easy to figure out what year it is. I don't know. How old am I? I don't know. What year is it?
You have to be able to answer one of those questions.
Yeah.
And then where were you born?
I was born in Flushing Hospital. My parents lived in College Point, which is a small dead-end town in Queens on the East River.
Right. And you went back there much later.
But
When was the last time you went back to College Point?
it's probably 20 years ago now. I went
Right.
back there and stopped in, and it was, well, no, I did. I went back there when my aunt passed away from my cousins. We went back in there for some reason. I can't remember.
Hmm.
And we actually stopped at the sweet shop we used to go to, which was a store owned by, um, I can't remember his name, but Julie. His first name was Julie, and he had like 8 daughters. He wanted a son. I'm not sure if they ever got a son, but I think they might have got a son on the last one. But he used to make his ice cream on the premise.
Right. And was he still there when you went back?
No,
Okay. So what had changed?
everything. Um, it was no longer, when I was there, it was predominantly German and Irish and Italians. The Irish and the Italians were the invaders. It was basically a German town.
Right.
And
And what's your ethnicity?
I'm Irish.
So you were an invader.
Yes, my grandparents were the invaders, I guess. My father, the Catholic Church, the Catholic built a church and a school there, St. Fidelis and St. Agnes High School,
Uh-huh.
which my parents went to. Actually, my mother moved into College Point uh, just as she was getting into high school, I think. She might have went to St. Yeah, no, she did go to St. Fidelis because I have a ring
Mm.
from St. Fidelis.
So they went to high school together?
No, they were 4 years
4
apart.
years apart.
Yeah,
Nice.
but they knew each other. I think I'm not positive this. I think my mother's older brother and my father were very good friends. I believe that, but they could have been friends after they started dating, but I believe they were good friends. My father met him up in the war in Scotland, before the D-Day. My uncle parachuted into D-Day, and my father dropped bombs on D-Day, so
Right. So they were both there.
they were both there, yeah. So, but it was College Point, Irish, Catholic, and when I went back there, I would say the predominant uh, people there are probably Hispanic now, maybe even Mexican, but I'm not positive because when I went back to the church, St. Fidelis, which was a Gothic church, it's reminds you a little bit of St. Patrick's Cathedral, that
Hmm.
type.
Hmm.
It's a little bit smaller. It's still a pretty big church. And when I went there, all the statues were drabby gray and drabby blue and drabby, it's like spooky colors and dark and candlelit and everything. And when I went back after the Spanish or Mexicans took over. Like I said, I'm not sure, but I think it was Mexicans because they painted all the statues. The yellows were now bright yellow, bright green, bright red. I went, oh wow, this isn't as spooky as when I went. When I went there, it was pretty spooky to be in there, like all
Right,
these statues and icons looking at you.
right.
But
Uh,
so there was
mm.
quite a difference. And the school is closed, so there's no Catholic school there anymore, but the church is still there.
Oh, okay, so the school isn't there. The school
Right,
that you
both
went to.
schools closed. I think they still have a convent there, and the church is there, but everything else is gone.
So how long did you go to school at the Catholic church at the Catholic school?
Well, I graduated the 8th grade. I went into kindergarten. It's half session, not half sessions.
Half days for kindergarten?
No, it was school started in September, and then it started also in January. So what would be your second semester or second half year became my first. So I was called kindergarten B because I started in January.
Oh,
Whereas
okay.
people who started in September were kindergarten A. So A and B went around, and I was always I went up the next grade in December, January, between December and January. And then one day they decided to do away with that, and they pushed everybody forward,
Mm.
which they probably should have pushed me back, but they didn't. And there
And
was
what
the
grade were you in then?
4th grade. Then I got left back in 7th grade. So I would say I was there a good 9 years, 9.5 years at the Catholic school. And when I started, like I say, it was half sessions, and we were baby boomers. So the school was not big enough for the amount of students they had, and they didn't turn anybody away. They just threw you through another desk in the classroom. So at times I had between 60 and 80 kids in the class.
Mm.
I don't think it ever reached 80, but it was over 70 with one nun or one teacher.
One nun
Yeah. And we
and
used to think
70
they were
kids.
like, well, we used to call it because they were Italian, most of them. We call them Mussolini because they were so strict. But then when I look back at that, if I was in a classroom with 70,
First graders.
first, second, third, any
Yeah, yeah.
grade school, I would have been like a total tyrant. They would have been
Yeah, right, right. You have
because
to maintain order.
you can always lighten up if you come in as a good friendly guy to be eaten alive and you'll never get control again. That's what happened to a
Right.
teacher in my high school. Tried to be Mr. Nice Guy and everybody took advantage of him.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was in the school, and like I said, it was 80, well, let's say 60 kids. Because I think there was an average between 60 and 70. So I got pushed ahead. But when I was younger, they kept trying to help me because I was like, I wanted nothing to do with school. I saw my next older brother go to school screaming and kicking when it was his turn. And I remember looking out the window thinking, I'm next. I didn't want to go to school. We had built up fear about the nuns and everything, even though I had two aunts. Well, one was my mother's cousin, but she had been an orphan. Spent a couple of years in my mother's room growing up because her and her brothers were taken in by my grandparents. But yeah, so we're in the school, and there's like I say, 60 kids. My parents had 14. Well, not at that time. By the time I went to school, Richard, which is Rusty, Kathy, Billy, Bobby, Eileen, Maury, Jimmy, Richard, what, 7 or 8 kids? 8, I think it was. So there was 8 of us at the time, and of course, you had to pay for the Catholic school, and I think they gave my parents a really good bargain because they were really good Catholics, having a lot of kids. So they, I think, after like 4, everybody was free, but I'm not positive about that. Don't quote me, but it might as well have been free. But then I was going to school, and I needed extra help. I believe, I was undiagnosed, but I think I had HDHDA.
And dyslexia.
What?
And
and
dyslexia,
dyslexia.
which is why the ADHD is
Right.
HADA.
That's why I mix it up all the time, yeah. I had dyslexia, and then, I had, you know, instead of, helping, they just ignored you if you couldn't keep up. You got ignored, and my mother, they would send notes saying to my mother, "I needed help, I needed help, I needed help." My mother sent me to different people to try to teach me how to read. My grandma, friend's mother, the crossing guard lady, a couple of people. I went into their houses, and uh, I couldn't even half the time I couldn't figure out what was the first letter of a word. If I said, "How do you spell this?" Somebody said, "Look it up in the dictionary," and I usually couldn't get past the first letter in a dictionary, so looking up stuff in a dictionary was a waste of time. And then around the 4th grade, somewhere in that 4th grade area, the nuns decided they weren't gonna teach me anymore, and they stopped complaining to my mother
Mm.
about how bad a student I was, and my mother, having all these kids, figured, "Oh, I must be doing okay in school because,"
They're
well,
not
but she
complaining
should have
anymore.
looked at my report card because I failed everything. Except religion, I think, and math. When I was younger, I'd pass math. Then I started failing math around the 3rd or 4th grade because everything was a word problem. I was driving down the road at 50 miles an hour and I passed a car going the other way at 30 miles an hour, and I couldn't figure out. I couldn't read the questions. All I could see was the numbers. So I would take the 30 and the 40 and I would divide them and try to come up with some kind of an answer that I figured that, that they might want, which may or may not have been right at some times. So then I got up into I think it was the 5th grade, and we all got in trouble for something. And the nun said, "All right, everybody has to take out their geography book to chapter 3, read the chapter, and then write down all the questions on a piece of paper and answer all the questions. And if you don't do it, by the time school is over, we're gonna hang you," basically. They didn't say that, but, you'd be in more trouble. So if you didn't do the assignment, you're in trouble. So I couldn't read the chapters. I could read some words, but I wouldn't. I'm looking at it was on, I know it was on Brazil. That's all I know, or South America. I'm not sure, because one of the questions is, what is the capital of Brazil? And of course, I had no idea. And I couldn't read it. And so when I would answer the questions, they'd say, I'd copy the question down. What is the capital of Brazil? And then I would answer the question with, Brazil is the capital of what?
Mhm.
That's how I answered all the questions. I just jumbled up the question. The question said, where's Rio de Janeiro, or what river goes through? And I would say, what river goes through? I answered the question with a question.
Mhm.
So, but I handed in my homework so I wouldn't get in trouble. Next day, come to school,
Mhm.
and all the chairs are changed. There must have been about 60 kids in the class. It had to be at least that many. She separated all the aisles, and then by the window, there was a whole row of seats by the window, and there was an extra wide aisle between that window seats and the next seat. And then she called out everybody's numbers and put them in our seats. And I got to be in the first seat by the window, row that was separated. So I'm sitting in the seat, and then the nun finishes getting everybody seated. And then she said, "Class, this is the dumb row." And she pointed to us at the window. And she said, "And Robert, you're in charge of the dummies." I was the head dummy.
Mm.
So I said, "Okay, at least I'm in charge, or if the head dummy, But she said, the nun then said, "In this class, we will be teaching lessons to those." Oh, she said something to the effect that you people don't have to do anything. You can look out the window, color in your coloring book, lay down and go to sleep, do this, do that, do anything you want to do as long as you don't disturb the rest of the class that's here to learn.
Mm.
The rest of the class is here to learn. You're here to sit in your desk and behave. That's what we did was mostly, I colored a lot, but then I found in the winter you could melt your crayon. Janitor probably a portion of the radiator next to the window had all kinds of melted wax and crayon wax. And of course, that was a hippie thing when they started doing candles. You see all the different colored candles dripping on them. I said, I did that in school.
That's what I learned.
Did
I
that in
learned that in
fifth
elementary
grade.
school. Mm.
Yeah, so that was one of the things. And then, of course, there was a time, I wanted to be an altar. So they said there'll be altar boy tryouts for us. I think I was probably 10 on what grade I was in around that same time. Fifth grade. It could have been, no, it wasn't the sixth grade. I think it was the fifth grade as well. And I think this was before I was put in a dumb row. I went out for the altar boys. And my brother Billy, who wanted to hang out with me, he went out with him too because I was going. The only reason he went there was because I went there. He didn't really want to be an altar boy. So we're going to altar boys, and then the next day in class, the teacher said, "How many of you boys went out to apply to become altar boys?" And at that time, you had to learn Latin, and all the boys that went out raised their hand, and I raised my hand too. So there was probably about 10 or 12 hands raised. And the nun looked at me and said, You, Rogers, you went out for altar boy? You can't speak English. How are you going to learn Latin? I'm going to speak to Father Hefner about you. And after school for the altar boy class, and Father Hefner told me he told me I was kicked out of the class because the nun told me I wasn't a good enough student. Although I had already learned Ecum Spiri 220. Miscum Ecum Spiri 220. That was all one day. All you had to learn was how to repeat what they were saying. It wasn't like I had to learn Latin. But anyway, kicked out, and my brother walked out. He said, "If you don't want my brother, you ain't, and I'm getting out of here too." So he walked out. So it was like, okay, so now I'm kicked out of the altar boys. I'm in the dumb row. And everything was fine for a while, and then got into the sixth grade, and my brother Billy got left back into my class. And so we were in the same class together, and there was this lay teacher, Mrs. Schmidt, which that was a married name. She must have married one of the Germans in town because she was Sicilian. She never gave me homework. I never got called on. I just hung out in the class and did whatever I wanted to do, I guess. And as long as I didn't, get caught talking or passing notes or whatever. So one day after school, I'm out playing, and my brother Billy's in the house doing homework. And he was having a lot of problems with it. So he had my mother help him. And then I said, "Boy, it's a lot of homework. Did Bobby finish his homework?" And my brother says, "They don't give Bobby homework." My mother said, "What?" He said, "They don't give Bobby homework." Well, she said, "What do you mean they don't give Bobby homework?" He said, "I don't know. They don't give him homework."
Mhm.
Actually, Mrs. Schmidt was, like I said, I don't know what her real name, maiden name was, some Sicilian name, but she went to school with my father. We was in
Mm.
the same class. And when my parents went down to find out why they weren't teaching me, Mrs. Schmidt told them was because I was retarded. And that's when my father said he called her a retard. So he probably did, I don't know. But anyway, the next thing I know, I was going to after school reading classes. I had to get on a bus, go into Flushing, go to the Catholic high school, I think it was Trinity High School. I'm not sure.
And who else had to go with you?
Well, then they started sending Billy
Mhm.
because they figured he could probably use it. And then they started sending Maureen, but Maureen didn't go the first year. In fact, I think Maureen only went 1 year, but she might have went 2. She's still
She's still mad about it.
mentions I had to go to on the bus after school because of you.
I knew
Sorry.
how to read.
Yeah, she didn't know how to read either. She had the same problem as me, I think. But I think the probably the major reason I didn't learn anything in school is because I was totally not interested in learning anything in the school. They didn't have anything that I wanted to learn, basically. I
Yeah.
liked playing with numbers, so I liked the math, but, and I wound to grew up, loving history, but other than that, then, of
Mm.
course, I spent the next, 6 and I got left back in the 7th grade because I missed the first 2 weeks of school in the 7th grade because, I had an operation. Uh, my mother decided to leave me back, which I didn't wanna get left back because I wanted to stay in the same grade as my when I got left back.
You weren't supposed to be in the same grade as Uncle Billy anyway.
I know, we weren't supposed to be in the same, and I don't know why they put us in the same class because, there was more than one 5th grade class or 6th grade class, but they put us both in the same class, otherwise my mother wouldn't have known I didn't have homework. "Oh, he's in a different class, so he doesn't have homework." But anyway, I, finished up, 3 years of 3 more years of grammar school and graduated 8th grade in College Point, and we transferred out to Long Island, and my mother was upset because we weren't gonna be going to the Catholic school. They put me in the 9th grade in,
Newfield?
Dawnwood.
Don oh,
I didn't have it was like middle school
oh,
last
okay.
year, middle
The
school.
junior high.
And the thing about it, when I got left back from the 7th grade, in the 7th grade, I got left back 1 year, but my year was the last year that they taught old math, they called it, where you did the long division and the long, and the year before after me, they changed the way they did the math, the way they carried the points and all this other stuff. You did it, the
Mhm.
opposite, whatever. But I kept doing it the old way, and in the Catholic school, they said, "Don't worry about it. You know the old way." Boom. Then I got to Dawnwood, and I got into argument with the teacher, my math teacher, which was a nice guy and everything. And he goes, "Nope, I graded you all wrong." I said, "Why? I got all the questions right. I showed all my work." He says, "Yeah, but your work was wrong." I said, "Why is my work wrong? Everything's right." He goes, "You did it in the old method. It's no longer being used for this grade." I said, "Yeah, but I went through 8 grades of this. Now I'm in the 9th grade. You tell me I have to change and do the." He goes, "Yes." The next test, I did the same thing. He failed me again. The next test, I did the same thing. He failed me again. And then he came and decided, so I'm going to start grading you on the old school math because I refused to do it. I mean, I think I could have learned it pretty much, but I said, why? I said, if I'm getting all my questions right, why do I have to change how I do it?
Still a problem now.
Well,
It's still a problem now.
I know they keep
They
changing math over and over.
change the
I
math, but
mean,
they mark the kids wrong if they don't do it in the right way,
I know.
even if they get the right answer.
I know, but I just said, "All right, fail me. I don't care." They were willing to fail me, but finally the guy gave in. And but then when I went into high school, I took electric courses, and with the electric, there was a electrical math, so I didn't have to take general math or algebra or anything. Which there was a lot of algebra or something when you get into those. Math equations, like R over R, 1 over R times 1 over R divided by, R over 1, all this other stuff for the resistance and ohms and, figuring out amperage and series parallel circuits and all that other stuff. So there was a lot of different math, but because they difficult. Do you ever have algebra? Not technically, but I did work with it. Did you have it? No, but what is the angle stuff? I don't know.
Geometry? Oh,
Geometry,
trigonometry with the angles.
trigonometry, but we worked with angles because we always have charts and stuff like that. So I did basically some of that, but it was never an official
Right.
geometry or trigonometry or
You
whatever.
never did the Sakatoa?
So I had 4 classes. I had 3 classes of electrical and then 1 class of math. All the time I was going to school, though, I hated school, so I would stay home from school probably, on an average 50 to 60 days a year, which is
It's
unheard
like
of.
about half.
But out in College Point, the nuns,
I guess it's not
they
true.
didn't take attendance the same way as the public school did.
Hmm.
And in fact,
Well,
my
you'd
old
think you were in the front, they would notice that you weren't there.
what?
Like, when you were in charge of the dumb row, that
Oh,
they would
yeah, but
notice you.
they knew I wasn't there, and they just didn't care. I believe in public school, if you're not there, they don't get your money. It's tied in with the money that they get. You only had 200 students, not 250, so you're getting,
Less money.
$5,000
That's what
less
I've
for
heard
that
too.
day or whatever it is. So they were big about. They kept threatening me that I was going to fail, but I never failed anything. In fact, I did very well in the school. I did I top of the class, and then when I graduated from the electrical class, and they put me in a Regents class, which they didn't have Regents in that, but they put me in a Regents class at one point on history, and I loved history. And we're doing American history, and we're into like just the end of the World War, around World War I, and I got two failures because every time they'd have a test, they'd have an essay, and I'd pass. They'd have my grades. They'd give me like, you got an 85 minus 40. And they took off 40 points for 10 points for spelling this word, 5 points for this comma not be. And every time I passed every single test they gave me, but I failed it when they took the subtract. They subtracted from
The grammar and
the
the spelling.
grammar and the spelling and all that other stuff because I had to do an essay.
Mhm.
So finally, they dropped me back to what is it? What was I saying? What was that school? It was
Not the electrical
non whatever you had. What kind of diploma you have to
the
get?
diploma that's not a Regents diploma?
Yeah, Regents. They dropped me out of Regents. At that time, you could be Regents or non-Regents. So they dropped me out of Regents at the end of the third quarter, and they gave me an incomplete. So I had an F, and incomplete. And they told me I was going to have to get a real good mark on the last part of this test, or I wasn't going to, pass history. So I'm sitting in the class, and I sit down to take the class, and they're just starting the Civil War. Just starting the Civil War. We did the Civil War, you know, 2 months ago or something like that. We were into World War I.
Yeah.
So it was almost like a review, and I wound up getting an ace for the last quarter and getting an ace for the final grade. And because the incomplete, they give you what you get on your next quarter. They gave me an A, so I had F, F, A, and it averaged out to a B. So I don't know what a B
In the history class.
in the history. The rest of it was electricity, because then they always was threatening me that I was going to fail because I wasn't coming to the school much, and then they just told me they were going to leave it all up to my finals because they didn't think I would pass because I missed too much school, and I wound up getting very, very good grades actually before I could read. But yeah, so that got me through high school.
Right.
Now, you want to continue with this?
Yeah, well, let's stop this. I'm gonna pause the show.